Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi, I'm Natasha, CEO of South Australian Leaders. I'm passionate about supporting the growth of businesses through the power of collaboration, helping companies to connect, scale and grow. This podcast is all about collaboration for anyone who runs a business. It can be lonely at the top. I believe no one executes alone. We all do better when we do it together. These are real companies talking about real challenges and how they strive to overcome them. Let's all learn and share together. Today I'm talking with a man who is very inspirational in business. What I love about my guest today is he's originally not from Adelaide and has chosen to live in Adelaide, which I think ticks a great box. And he also is a great supporter of this podcast. I welcome today Rob Statham from Bespoke Manufacturing Group. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, Natasha. Great to be here.
Now, everyone can automatically hear the bit of an accent there. Rob, what's your background?
Originally from Manchester, UK. Born and raised in a town called Stockport, just on the outskirts. Spent, obviously, childhood there and had many years of fun along the way. Progressed from there into always involved in selling as a child. Spent a lot of time in and around entrepreneurial people. My dad had a business which I was sort of seeing the power of hard work. It was really inspiring from there. Always working, 7, 8 years old, cutting hedges, always involved in selling, buying and selling cars, which then found me into a position of cleaning cars in a used car sales place as a child, 12 years old. Had a lot of enjoyment there. I learned a lot from people, interactions with customers. And I suppose it was those early abilities to sort of adapt to relationships and see how people were interacting with me, buying and selling, which then taught me a lot of lessons going forward, really.
So you said 12 years old, right? So that's entrepreneurial from the very early age. And obviously you got a lot of sort of street cred in that time. What brought you to Adelaide? Let's just talk about that journey.
Yeah, so 2011, myself and my partner at the time, we both just said to each other, look, let's go and have a look at Australia and see what's out there. No real intentions of moving here. Came over here for a holiday, found ourselves in Adelaide as a starting point because she had some distant relations there. And then we never left. It was a great place, just really family orientated. And there's an opportunity with my skill set from a technical background that was missing in the market over here. And opportunities opened up and we're still here.
For those listening that are not from South Australia, heed that call because it is a great place to live, lifestyle, doing business and so much more. So 2011, you never left Adelaide. What did you do then?
Yeah, so I picked up a job working for a company based in Melbourne from a technical aluminium sense, selling in South Australia and looking after ACT as well. Really good opportunity. Had a great leader of the business who was very entrepreneurial, inspiring. So I worked with him for many years and then carried on with that position. Left for a little bit of a break, had no intentions of just changing industry, and then was kind of dragged back into the industry through relationships and old customers that I've known to assist them with design and some technical support. And then that led me into sort of the career that I'm in now.
So aluminium you mentioned then, which is the core of what you're doing now. So just explain to everyone who's listening, Bespoke Manufacturing Group, which is bespoke aluminium and key manufacturing. What do you do?
Yeah, so Bespoke Aluminium was the business I started in 2019 from scratch, just myself and my dining room table. And then from progression over the 4-year period, we've gone into sort of 5 different locations. From that growth, we've seen sort of year-on-year growth, which has been fantastic. Bespoke Aluminium fundamentally is the supply of custom designed aluminium extrusions and distribution. So we go right through from prototype to concept and then supply a solution to customers in South Australia fundamentally and around Australia.
So if you go up to your wardrobe and there's an aluminium door handle, that's probably yours.
Hopefully, yeah. That's right. So that's the Bespoke Aluminium. And then the recent acquisition last year was of a company called Key Manufacturing, who's a long-established South Australian business, been around about 60 years, done some really big business and big growth over that period. And then sort of the owner was coming to the point of retirement, a lot of established customers. So then I took the opportunity then to sort of acquire that business. They fundamentally focus on a turnkey solution. So there's a lot of synergy between the two companies. from aspect of bringing in a full length of aluminium, and we process it right the way through from precision cutting, ceramic bead blasting, punching, pressing, 2 CNC machines, powder coating, anodizing. So it's the full in-house capabilities, which then enables us to do a full turnkey solution and put it in a box and send to our customers. Yeah.
So there's a nice synergy here, and I want to talk to you about, you mentioned an acquisition. Bespoke Aluminium, you were importing, distributing and customising, and now you've gone into, with Key Manufacturing, a full-on manufacturing business, which has got way more complexity, I imagine. Talk to me about that and the synergy between those two companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergy from the products related. The Key Manufacturing essentially would have been a customer of ours for Bespoke Aluminium. So bringing the two together does have its complexities from people. Merging of two businesses together has always got its complexities. We've now moved all under one roof, which is obviously going to make that aspect a little bit easier for us. But the elements are really, I suppose, crucial from the aspect that we can bring aluminium in at one end and then right the way through the process and distribute out the other end. Offers us that really turnkey solution, which is what we've always been looking for. The business back in sort of mid-2019, we were looking for that next area of strategic growth. And to grow, the future was always manufacturing and how we do that and how we support our local customer base and give them the full solution. In the past, we were outsourcing some of those components. Now we have the ability to bring everything in-house and be the one-stop shop, which was always my future and the goal of where we wanted to take things.
So when you were young, you said you were in a business environment and entrepreneurial and sales. And now you're in a business with some complexity. You've taken some risk to get there. Talk to me about that mindset. How have you done that? Did you wake up one day and go, I'm going to acquire a manufacturing business? Or was it more incremental?
The growth was a big part of it. We were getting year-on-year growth. And then that mindset of risk, because I've always been a big believer in risk. I think you've got to take a big risk to get a big reward, but you've also got to cover the downside. I think that was a Richard Branson sort of quote on that. So covering that downside was always a big part, and especially with any business, there's always an element of risk. But it's okay, what's the risk versus reward, and can this strategically move me in the right direction going forward? And
talk to me about that acquisition process. What were some of the key learnings from that?
Acquisition was very interesting from all elements of. From a collaboration, pulling all elements of people together to network, from the SA leaders network, from the legals from the accountants, they were all pulled together.
Like a team of people.
Correct. Yeah. And it takes a lot to sort of make that happen. But the speed of the acquisition was interesting in terms of it had to hit a certain date for the retirement of the previous owner. So it was a lot of lessons learned. But along the way, it was all people related in those relationships that enabled me to keep pushing forward and sort of hit the ground running, which is all part of it.
What was some of those lessons in terms of due diligence process? There must have been some complexity, negotiation. What are some of those lessons?
Yeah, due diligence is always an interesting topic. Everyone's got different stories. Mine was quite a fast-track process. For me, due diligence is one thing, but fundamentally it comes down to there's risk regardless. What you see on paper doesn't necessarily mean that that's truthful. So we had to look at all areas, but ultimately it came down to risk, and was I willing to take that risk and go forward? And look, I did, and I'm glad I did, and it's really put me on that trajectory to take the business into the future, to hit the big goals and the big vision, which is where I want to take the group, really. And
I really noticed that about you, Rob. You've got a big vision, and I think that also stems back to when you said your early childhood. You mentioned before, when you merged the two businesses, people, that cultural element, which is a favourite topic of conversation of mine. Talk to me about that. What were the strengths and what worked well, and what were some of the challenges when you merged two businesses together from a cultural perspective, and what do you keep an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, merging any business is always going to be tricky. A lot of the staff that were employed in the company that I bought, I've been there 25 years, 20 years plus. So they've sort of got their ways of working and processes, which is great. But also we've got to move things forward, and then bringing those two companies together is a merge of cultures. So for me, it's all about people and how do we drive people forward, and how do we create that culture that's going to push the business forward. So it's challenging, it's always going to be, but I think that we've got the vision. Once I set the vision on this is where we want to take the business and this is where I believe we can take it, everyone's on board, and once they can see what's ahead of them, it makes a big difference.
And was that about some good old-fashioned communication? How did you engage them?
Yeah, I am very much old-fashioned with a lot of my methodology. Even from a sales point of view, I still believe in old school customer service, face-to-face meetings. It's really important, and I think that's lacking generally in the market. And I believe that's one of our strengths, and that's what's given us that success. So with the people in the business, it is really about communication. Feet on the floor in the factory, speaking to people, seeing what they do, how they do it, why they do it. And then that helps with the incremental progress, because you ask the questions, why do you do it that way? What's your reason for this? Can we change this? What if we did this? Can we turn the speed up here? And it's those little tweaks and adjustments of the incremental progress that really sort of help drive the business forward. And that's also been part of the daily grind for the past few years since the business started, and that day-to-day pushing has really given momentum.
I think that's really important for those listening to just refresh on that, because I too agree with you that some good old-fashioned customer service, some good old-fashioned communication, face-to-face relationships goes a long way. Relationships, collaboration, let's talk about some examples of collaboration, which I imagine is every day for you. It's about your customer relationships, your supplier relationships. Talk to me about collaboration in your business.
Once I reflect on collaboration, it really becomes such a big part of my career, essentially. The business was built purely on relationships and collaborations, from suppliers to long-established customers. And that network of people have got the business to where it is. So if it wasn't be able to offer those personalised solutions, and I believe sort of collaboration comes out of the catalyst of communication and how we sit down, how we interact, and then what solution we can create from there. So if it wasn't for collaborations, I don't think the business would be anywhere where it is now. For me, the relationships are so crucial to knowing where we're going to take the business, because once we got an idea of what you want to achieve, we can then create a personalized custom solution and then supply that for you. And that's really, really important.
Have you got any examples of collaboration outside of customer and suppliers?
I suppose the big recent one would have been the acquisition itself. That collaboration was fundamentally timing, really good timing. And we were looking for that next stage. The acquisition was something that was boiling around in the background that nobody really knew of. A customer of mine with a great relationship, he was looking to invest in some property. I was looking for a business. It was just a perfect synergy of two people, the right time, and the opportunity was there. So that really put things on the table and sped the process up. We were just the right people, the right time, and the acquisition needed energy. It needed some youth going through there and injecting the passion, and that's kind of where we're at. And that collaboration really sort of sealed the deal, and it is very strong now. Right time
and the energy. So put yourself out there, ask the questions, have the conversations.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I mean, I've said recently the ability to say yes and not no. A lot of people are looking at how they can say no more because they've to save their time. And yes, I agree with that element to a degree, but ultimately saying yes opens up doors. You don't have to say yes and then follow it through. You can say yes, let's take this idea for a walk, let's see where it goes, but then ultimately you can say no. But without saying that initial yes, or would you consider this acquisition, would you look at this project, would you look at this solution, the opportunity wouldn't be presented to me. So I'm a big believer in taking ideas for a walk, and sometimes that can be a negative because you're always saying yes, but to be customer centric and customer focused, I think you've always got to say yes, find a solution. If you can't do it, then I'll happily put my hands up and say this one's not right for us.
Everyone, take your idea for a walk. Let's do that. We could put a bit of structure about that. I mean, SA leaders, I call it working on the business, allowing yourself time, but also your mind, the space to think about your ideas, and taking them for a walk is a nice analogy there. With leaders, I call the workshop content, I call it business meditation. Giving yourself the time to think about your ideas, letting them come to you, almost sort of freeing up your headspace and saying yes.
And I think if you don't say yes, you don't think outside the box, and then you never challenge and you never push things forward. I think it's very easy just to say, no, I'm stuck in my lane, this is what I'm doing. But every time you look at new opportunities, new areas of growth, that's where it comes from, it really is.
And you're in manufacturing, and there is more complexity about that. We talked about customer and supplier relationships. When you're talking to a customer, I hear from you forefront in your way you do business is that's all about relationship. That's what I'm hearing from you. But then we have a conversation in manufacturing around price sensitivity and some of those more nuanced contractual kind of negotiations that go on with customers in a manufacturing sense. How do you balance out when you're saying, well, here's my price, select me to be your supplier, versus relationship? Where do you see the nexus there?
Yeah, it's always a good topic.
Does relationship trump price?
100%. Yes, relationship, service, lead time, solution, yeah, they are the fundamentals. Price is very important. We've got to compete especially from a manufacturing sense with overseas imports. There's definitely a big change in mindset currently at the minute with what's going on overseas. So people are now starting to look, okay, well, look, do we dual source? Do we manufacture more in this country as well as import? And I think that leads a good opportunity for us from a manufacturing sense. We're some old school fabrication that we do, from cutting and processing to CNC work. So for us to compete, our level of competition, we've got to be fast, we've got to be efficient, and we've got to give excellent service. But fundamentally, it comes down to the quality of the products. The quality of the products that leaves our factory is exceptional, I believe, on a global scale. And so for us to really push that forward, we've got to deliver. And delivering is all part of what we do. Price is still important, and we've got to keep aspects keen on the price, because ultimately, if we're too expensive locally, it's not going to happen. But I think it's definitely, people's mindset is changing currently, very much so.
I love how you say that with such conviction. That's very powerful. And yes, I agree that price is certainly not the only part of doing business. But speaking of, you must be always looking, manufacturing's always looking for ways to be more efficient. You mentioned that doing business in the world is becoming more complex and the cost of doing business is increasing. You mentioned supply chain challenges have arisen more of late. What do you do to mitigate some of those things and also support your customers with some of those things? You talked about local manufacturing. We're changing the way we do things, really, aren't we? We have to.
We have to, yeah. I mean, communication ultimately is a big focus. And once again, that communication combined with relationship really understands what the customer actually needs, what they need to achieve, and under what format they want that. So by working closely and understanding their requirements, we can then manufacture a solution or create a service that's tailor-made for them, really. And
we talk about just in time versus just in case. What insights do you have on that? And you talked about customization, which is a critical element of your expertise and value add. But just talk to me about some of the theories behind both.
Just in time, yeah, there's, I think, an ideal world, that's what everyone would want. During COVID, we definitely saw a situation where people were going more towards the just in case. People were stocking up to ensure that they didn't have any of those issues, which ultimately falls back into my previous point on local manufacture. So having that just in case was people were stocking up, which was affecting people's cash flows, for the business. So the just-in-time aspect is ideal, but the reality is it's got to be a combination of the both. And if we can manufacture more products in Australia, that's really going to help with local businesses become a bit better from a cash flow and fundamentally help feed their businesses going forward.
And there's big announcements in the market at the moment, AUKUS and, those big opportunities heading job creation. That's really what we want here, isn't it? Bring new innovation, new ideas, more people, job creation. Manufacturing is so important. What are your principles around that for South Australia?
South Australia at the minute for me is very exciting. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of really fascinating companies coming out of South Australia, and sort of being part of the network and meeting these people and seeing what they're doing is inspirational. And I think the future is really powerful. The defence sector is obviously a big area of growth, and another area that we'll be sort of looking heavily into supporting, whether that's collaborations with our customers or whether we look at strategically moving and assisting defence there as well. But yeah, very exciting to see what's being led out of South Australia on a global scale.
I totally agree. And I talked about it at Leaders last week about how companies think about becoming defence ready, as that is going to be a process that takes time. And it's also quite broad in the opportunities that are coming to South Australia. There's some direct and indirect opportunities. So if those listening, if you're not thinking about that already, start today. Part of your strategy, and I love talking about the process of strategic planning, you're a sort of medium-sized business. What do you do to plan ahead, engage your people and think about those opportunities? Do you have a particular process that you use to plan within the organisation?
For me, a lot of the structure has been started through the EOS, obviously from Traction, which
Explain what that is.
So the EOS system, the Entrepreneur's Operational System, was something that was introduced by Mike Scott, who was a previous guest on here, and
yes,
so that was really inspiring, and it just gave some really fundamental aspects of planning. So we work on the sort of 90-day strategic plan. That's how I sort of format my structure. With the organisation now, we're sort of around the 18 people. So I'm looking at, okay, how can we keep sort of feeding these people with work and growth and where's going to be the future. So we're constantly looking to add people to our team. So the strategic planning is really trying to keep it as simple as possible. I use a lot of forecasting with cash flows and stock forecasts because they're really sort of fundamental to where we take it. So the strategic planning really is looking at new markets, new opportunities, existing customers, and how we can grow the existing customer base, but also support our customers in new areas and new aspects of growth that they're looking for.
Fantastic. And not the first person to mention Traction, the
That's
book,
right.
on this podcast. It's a reminder there. Are you reading any other good books at the moment, Rob?
Reading's an interesting one. I'm more of an audio.
Audio? Okay, you're listening.
Audio.
The new way to do things.
That's right. That's right.
Just like this podcast.
Correct. And I'm a big fan of podcasts in general. I listen to a lot of different podcasts, but the other book really was EOS. You've got Scaling Up, which I think was Vern Harnish. But other than that, over the years, I've read there's a few aspects that kind of stick with me. The big one is a quote from Jay Abraham. It was the 3 ways to grow a business, and these have always stuck to me in my mind. And the first one was increase your customers, which is a very obvious statement. The second one was increase your transactional value, so increase the amount per transaction of how you can add value. Can you add more offerings? Can you increase that customer? And the third one was increase the frequency of purchasing. So is the means and ways of how you can increase more frequency through more areas. So those have been really strategic to me going forward. And if I'm ever stuck or ever a roadblock, there's what I always drive myself back to, in the back of the diary, look at those 3 areas, and they really help me sort of, clear my head and focus on the 3 aspects that are going to move the needle the most.
Rob, an inspirational conversation today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
I really hope you enjoyed this chat and it inspires you to harness your own power of collaboration. You can contact me, Natasha Milani, via LinkedIn or saleaders.com.au. All my details are in the show notes. And thank you for listening.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.